Hi everyone, welcome back to our channel. Today we are here with the 7th episode of our tutorial series on Procreate architecture. Summer has arrived, and it is a great time not only to relax and rest, but also to learn new things and explore your creativity. If you haven't already checked the previous episodes of our Procreate tutorial series, now is a great time to catch up from episode 1. During today's episode, we will show you how to create this paper cutout effect on an elevation view. Let's dive into it and start with bringing our elevation drawing into Procreate. Tap on the Import button up here. This will import your file and automatically create a new canvas with the exact dimensions and resolution of your drawing. We can see that the drawing layer is here. Now, let's bring our color palette. Open the Colors menu and go to Palettes. Tap the plus button and choose New from File. This way you can import any previously saved color palette to Procreate. Before we start the drawing, let's go to the Layers menu. Tap on the thumbnail of your drawing layer and choose the reference option from the menu. When you tap on it, you will see the reference text appearing below your layer name. This means you chose this layer to be the reference for any layer above or below. Procreate will recognize the lines from this layer while selecting or color dropping unless you turn off the reference feature. This method will allow us to color fill on separate layers without even touching our original imported drawing layer. You can see how it works better with a couple of quick experiments like this. It recognizes the enclosed areas on your imported drawing layer. I create new layers and start color dropping inside the big masses of my elevation view one by one. While doing that, I try to keep in mind the front-back relationship between them. I choose lighter colors for the surfaces closer to me and darker colors for the ones behind those. I pay attention to creating a new layer for each one of them. I start coloring the frames around the arches as well. If you have any details like window frames, columns, etc. on your drawing, I suggest coloring them on different layers with a shade darker color than the main masses. Once you finish coloring all of them, it will look something like this, and you can group them if you want to stay organized. Here, I am grouping and renaming them, and I am also rearranging the layer order. The darker colored surfaces are further away, so I place them behind others. Now, it is time to create the surrounding environment. I create new layers for each element and color fill the sky, the ground, and the sea layers. Finally, I color fill the arcade as well. Most of these are window openings, but some of them have solid walls behind them. When finished with the color filling, it is time to swipe left and duplicate all these layers one by one. Then, I go to one of the duplicated layers and tap on the thumbnail of it. A quick menu will appear. Here, I choose Alpha Lock and do the same for all of the duplicates. These duplicates will be the shadow layers, so I will fill all these layers with a dark grey color, and Alpha Lock will keep them within their original shape. After recoloring all of them, I tap on the thumbnail and turn off the Alpha Lock one by one. I will apply Gaussian Blur to all these shadow layers to have more of a natural effect. Keeping the Alpha Lock feature on would prevent the blurring function, so make sure to turn it off. Select one of the shadow layers, go to the Adjustments menu, and choose Gaussian Blur. Now, you can slide your pen right to left to decide the amount of the blur effect. I am choosing 4% here, and I continue applying the same for all these shadow layers. When I am finished, I go to the Layers menu and select all of these layers by swiping them right one by one. And I move all of these layers together, so the shadow displacement will be the same for all. Now we can apply the same steps for the rest of the layers. I rearrange the layer order, and I duplicate the layers and create their shadows and apply Gaussian Blur accordingly. And finally, I regroup and rename them, and with this adjustment, I am finished with all of the base layers. Now we can add some vegetation, clouds, and waves to build a more lively and coherent look within our scene. For these detail elements, I am going to import the brush set that we prepared. You can draw your own vegetation and detail elements, or if you want to use the same brushes, you can find the link in the description box below. Go to Brush Library and tap the plus button you see here. This will bring the Brush Studio menu. Tap the Import button up here and choose the brush set you want to import. You can find the imported brush set at the very top of the brush library. I want to start with adding the waves and clouds. Once I add these, it seems possible to go a little further and create different levels of clouds and waves to enhance the paper cut layered up effect. In order to do that, I isolate the cloud layer and turn off the visibility of the background to see better. I create a new layer and choose the Studio pane, one of the default brushes from Procreate. I start tracing over the edges of the first layer of the cloud, but I am not very happy with the quality of the lines. They look a little shaky and unsteady. In order to solve this problem, I go to the Actions menu, choose the Prefs tab and play with the pressure and smoothing levels. This setting will eliminate unnecessary wobbles on my lines. With this new setup, I start over and redraw the cloud. When it is time to color fill, this happens. If you have the same problem, that is because we forgot to turn off the reference feature on the imported layer. The reference feature forces Procreate to color fill within the boundaries coming from that layer. Once I turn that off, I can easily color fill the desired area here. I draw and color fill for each layer of cloud separately. Then I continue the same process with the waves. When I am finished with all this, I duplicate the layers and start the shadow process. I alpha lock and recolor them with dark gray, and finally, I use Gaussian Blur and relocate the shadows a little further. I group these layers and repeat the same process for the clouds and sun as well. I make some minor color changes on the waves to drop the contrast. And now, it is time to add some plants around the building. I want to add an array of vegetation along all the levels of this building. I create a new layer and set up the size of the brush. I will create this horizontal row of plants, but I do not want to go overboard with the repetition of same shape. So I tap on the brush and go to the Brush Studio. Open the Shape menu and toggle on Flip X. This will allow the brush to randomly mirror the shape along the X-axis and help me with a slight variation. I activate the same toggle with each brush and layer of plants. I am finished, but you can see all these layers are located on top of the building layer. We can move them behind it, but I like some of these juxtapositions as they emphasize the depth in between them. So instead, I take the rectangular selection tool and erase the excessive parts manually. The brushes I used here have a certain transparency to them, but that will not work with the paper cutout effect that we are going for here. Therefore, I am duplicating all these layers to achieve a solid opaque look. And I will add more vertical plants around the edges of the canvas to tie the whole scene together. For this, I will use this brush and build up some masses of vegetation. I am lightening up the colors I used on the plants because I want the building to be the center of attention and the plants and the rest of the composition to dissolve into background. I use the same process of adding shadows as I did before. This time, I am making the Gaussian blur only up to 2% since these are smaller and more delicate areas. I continue duplicating and increasing the opacity, changing the colors, and adding shadows on the vegetation spreading around the edges as well. I am making some minor changes with the locations and colors. And with these last changes, the composition is complete. Now, as a final touch, I will add paper texture over all these layers. In this brush set, there are 5 different texture brushes. I try all of them with dark colors and low opacity. I like the subtle texture second brush gives, so I clear the whole canvas and carefully fill the screen with this brush and lower the opacity to a desirable level. And with this last step, we are finally completing the look. Hope you enjoyed this video and discovered something new along the way. Let us know if you have any questions. We will continue our journey on Procreate architecture. Do not forget to subscribe to our channel. See you at the next tutorial.